Eyewitnesses on ground are saying that the aircraft veered when it was about 200 feet or 300 feet from the runway. This can only happen when you lose an engine. Baramati is an unregulated airfield. It does not have proper ATC facilities. The air traffic control is manned by under-trainee pilots of the training academy there. It has no navigational aids which can help an aircraft to make a safe approach. The manufacturing of this aircraft was stopped by Bombardier in 2012. Normally, whenever an aircraft manufacturer stops production of an aircraft, he guarantees you spares for another 5 years. I don't think any aircraft manufacturer would guarantee you a spare part support for 10 to 12 years. Prima facie, it appears that he has lost an engine, and which was coupled with another emergency on board. Now, we really don't know what that emergency was, which made the crew lose control of the aircraft. Election flying is something totally different from your normal scheduled flying or your normal non-scheduled operations. This flying takes place at short notice at different places, and the aircraft is chartered from a different station. The aircraft may originate from Delhi, or it may come from Hyderabad, Chennai, or Bangalore. The crew may not be familiar with the airfield which they are going in. When I was with the government of Maharashtra as the chief pilot and as the director of civil aviation, I have interacted with him. Both when he was a passenger and I was flying the aircraft, and went for administrative duties with him. In aviation, where life is involved, should commercial considerations take precedence, or should air safety? Logically speaking, air safety should be taking precedence. Unfortunately, what happens in our country, aviation or flying is still considered as a rich man's game or a rich man's baby.
India is grappling with another plane crash months after the tragedy of Air India's Boeing 787 crashing mere seconds after lifting off. This time, a Learjet 45, a mid-sized business jet, was carrying the Maharashtra Deputy Chief Minister and NCP leader Ajit Pawar when a crash in Maharashtra's Baramati. Captain Sanjay Karve joins us at this moment. Captain, thank you so much for speaking with us. Just to introduce you to our viewers, you are a former chief pilot and a member of multiple flight safety organizations.
Thank you, Aayesha. It's a very sad day for the crew, passengers, and the state of Maharashtra. And I think this is not the way one would like to start a day, talking about that. But unfortunately, that is how it is. And my condolences to the families, the crew, and the passengers.
Absolutely. Sir, first and foremost, what is your initial assessment of the plane crash? I'm sure by now you would have seen the visuals of the aftermath.
Yeah, if you look at the visuals, one thing is very clear, that the weather appears to be okay. There is a little bit of haze, but the visuals show that you could see a reasonable amount of distance. And if you look at the smoke, there is wind, but it is a steady wind in a specific direction. So there are no changing wind patterns, because changing wind patterns at times do create a problem for an aircraft, especially when it is on a final approach. Baramati is not known to have extreme temperatures or extreme weather phenomena, unlike some other airfields in Maharashtra. Now, this is an aeroplane which had taken off from Mumbai, and Mumbai has got good maintenance facilities. So it is safe to assume that all the mandatory checks were carried out on the aircraft. The crew obviously would be geared up for VIP flying. They had taken off at 8 o'clock in the morning. Now, if you had taken off at 8 o'clock, I think it is fair to assume that they would have had adequate rest the previous evening or the previous day, which is as mandated by the DGCA. So that rules out the crew fatigue, that rules out aircraft maintenance, that also rules out the weather at that point of time. Now, eyewitnesses on ground are saying that the aircraft veered when it was about 200 feet or 300 feet from the runway. This can only happen when you lose an engine. But then aircraft of Learjet 45 who have or who fly with two engines, they are capable of landing on a single engine. In fact, these aircraft are designed to fly with a single engine, and there should be no problem in landing with one engine. Only other possibility is he had an emergency coupled with loss of an engine. And with the slant visibility being poor, there could be a case where the pilot has lost the orientation of the runway. He tried to regain. Now, this is just a possibility because some of the social media sites are stating that the pilot was asked to go round and make another approach to the runway. The horizontal visibility and slant visibility are two different things. Baramati is an unregulated airfield. It does not have proper ATC facilities. The air traffic control is manned by under-trainee pilots of the training academy there. It has no navigational aids which can help an aircraft to make a safe approach. So these are the factors which are again acting against the safety of a VIP flight, that you are landing into an airfield which has zero navigational aids. If you are talking of expanding aviation in India, it is not good enough to just build runways and airfields. You need to have basic navigational facilities available. We compare ourselves to Western world, like we say, okay, there are a lot of airfields in the Western world which do not have a full-fledged air traffic control. What we conveniently forget to add is most of these airfields have got adequate navigational aids, and there are adequate landing aids or charts available to carry out an approach even in poor visibility conditions, which is not so in India. Baramati airfield is an airfield with a short runway suitable for smaller aircraft, smaller business jets, ideally suitable for a turboprop aircraft. But the smaller business jets, what they do is they do not fly with the max passenger load, which in this case, a Learjet can carry 8 to 9 passengers. But normally, all these jets fly only with 4 to 5 passengers, which was there in this particular case also. The interesting part, or something which we need to ponder on, this Learjet 45XR, the aircraft which met with an unfortunate crash, was registered in India in 2010 as Victor Tango Sierra Sierra Kilo. The manufacturing of this aircraft was stopped by Bombardier in 2012. Normally, whenever an aircraft manufacturer stops production of an aircraft, he guarantees you spares for another 5 years. I don't think any aircraft manufacturer would guarantee you a spare part support for 10 to 12 years. So, spare part availability for an aircraft which have been out of production is a tricky affair. I am not insinuating anything about maintenance as say, but this is a peculiar problem on aircraft which have gone out of production and are still flying. The fact does remain that there are plenty of Learjets flying in Europe and also in some parts of the United States. So probably this can be sourced from all these resources. So prima facie it appears that he has lost an engine, and which was coupled with another emergency on board. Now we really don't know what that emergency was, which made the crew lose control of the aircraft and go into the ground. Now the visuals show that the aircraft has crashed just about a kilometer short of the runway. That means he was well aligned to land on the runway even with whatever emergency he had. And apparently he had given a mayday call. Now this is again not a confirmed news. This is what the social media is saying, and the local people at Baramati are saying he had given an emergency call. Now, if he had given an emergency call, it's now open to debate or reason as to what that particular emergency was.
Now, another note to add here, you just spoken about how this aircraft model has been used in other countries, and specifically, this aircraft has also been involved in crashes in Mexico and Italy, and also landing accidents in the United States. So that's another very important point to note. But what you had just mentioned, I want to bounce back to that, about how there are no proper navigational aids when it comes to airfields, especially when we talk about Baramati. Why does there still seem to be a lack of checks and balances when it comes to air safety, even if it's not a regulated airport or airfield? Why are these incidents still occurring? Why is there no Why is there no oversight committee that's looking into these matters to ensure that crashes like this don't continue to take place again and again and again?
See, oversight does take place in aviation. The regulator is quite rigid in its regulation. The crew may not be familiar with the airfield which they are going in. That also does matter. Like if you're chartering an aircraft within Maharashtra or say from Mumbai or Nagpur or Pune, they are familiar in operating from airfields within Maharashtra. I'm talking of visual airports. I'm not talking of airports with navigational aids. I'm talking of airfields which do not have navigational aids, what we term as VFR airfields, that is, which fly under the visual flight rules. So it is important that you utilize your previous knowledge of the airfield or the runway. In fact, the DGCA regulation mandates that when you are flying a VIP, you should have done a familiarization flight on that particular airfield, or if it's a helicopter, on that particular helipad. It is mandated by DGCA. But obviously, at times, commercial considerations do overrule this safety factor. Now, this is something which I'm sure DGCA will once again look into it, whether this requirement was met or when was it last met. If it was met just 1 month ago, 10 days ago, or 1 year ago.
So, what kind of commercial considerations take precedence over safety?
That's a very difficult question to answer. Every company would like to look at their balance sheet. What happened with Indigo? They very well knew that the FDTL rule is going to kick in after 18 months. Still, they stalled. Enrolling additional pilots, promoting their first officers to pilots, because the moment they do that, there is a more outflow of money, which disturbs the balance sheet. So this is something which the government has to seriously think about it, as to in aviation where life is involved, should commercial considerations take precedence, or should air safety? Logically speaking, air safety should be taking precedence.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, what happens in our country, aviation or flying is still considered as a rich man's game or a rich man's baby, notwithstanding the low-cost airline. That is the unfortunate part. It is not considered a common man's means of transportation. Somewhere down the line, I get a gut feeling that everyone in the organization feels, well, he's not my vote bank. It really doesn't matter. It boils down to that. But if you ask me as a crew, as a pilot, or as an ex-administrator in the government aviation department, air safety needs to be the paramount thing which one needs to look into. And in that case, any new airfield which comes up, you must have a minimum of navigational aids, whether the airfield is an approved airfield by DGCA or a non-approved airfield by DGCA, whether it's a regulated airfield or a non-regulated airfield.
Captain, from an airmanship perspective, what are the main priorities for the pilots once they realize that they may not be able to complete a normal landing?
As a pilot, your first priority is very simple: to fly the aircraft safely. What we call it, aviate. If you have an emergency, you first fly that aircraft. All aircraft are flyworthy. A twin engine aircraft is designed to fly on single engine. Other than critical emergencies which happen, which are known as react emergencies, all emergencies, the book laid down is fly the aircraft, control the aircraft, then look at what emergency you have had. And the pilots are adequately trained, they're tested. Every 6 months there is a check, which is known as a pilot proficiency check, which is carried out. Every year the pilots go on a simulator and carry out a set of emergencies which are there in the book, and the emergencies which are not there in the book also. In fact, a lot of pilots complain that the emergencies that they practice may never happen in real life. So that is the way a training is carried out. But when on ground, when you're operating in, I will say, hostile environment, when I say hostile means when you have no aids available, the runways are not of standard length, not of standard width, and you're flying fast aircraft. These are all fast jets. They are not slower moving aircrafts. Your reaction time is reduced. You need to react very quickly. So if you have an emergency, your first action is to get away from the runway, climb to a safe height, assess what the emergency is, then come and make a landing. And if it's a major emergency, they had an option of going to Pune, which has got a 10,000 feet runway and every possible aid available, where even the radar controller could have taken charge and brought it down. But if he has not done that, it would be safe to assume that the emergency was not that serious, which needed a diversion, and which, in crew's opinion, was that it could be handled at Baramati airfield itself.
I'm curious, considering the collective trauma that many in India experienced after the Air India tragedy, this is an incident that will most likely bring that fear back into the spotlight. What would you say to those who are scared of flying after seeing incidents like this?
I will still maintain, which I've always maintained, that when it comes to mode of transportation, aviation is the safest form of transportation. If you look at the number of deaths which happen in our own country, we have more people dying on road while crossing the road or in car crashes than in aviation. Even with that Air India 171 crash taken, still aviation is a much more safer means of transportation than any other means of transportation available in this country or anywhere in the world. You please look at the figures. Unfortunately, what happens is a road accident or deaths on the road are very rarely reported. We have got so used or so immune to 5 people dying in a road accident that it doesn't deserve a mention anywhere. But when you have collectively 6 people dying in an air crash with high profile people or 200 people dying, it becomes a news item. If you look at the number of hours which are being flown, the distance that which is being flown, and then look at the accident, it is a very minuscule amount. The pilots are well trained, they are well qualified to handle all emergencies. Yes, at times accidents do happen. And that is where the AIB comes into play. They'll go into the details and come out with corrective actions. The only grouse here is that AIB takes a long time to come out with their findings. By which time normally people would have forgotten the incident. And the government and the regulator also, they tends to take it lightly. Like the Air India crash, we still don't know what is the actual cause for which the aircraft crashed. The actual cause is ranging from a software glitch, fuel contamination, both engines shutting down. One really doesn't know what has happened.
So do you think it's then safe to say and safe to call this a failure of the overall air safety system that India has?
I would not put it directly like this. I would also add something which is known as a election pressure. There are a lot of commitments to be made in a particular day. The leader is required to be at 5 different places. And if you're operating from a VFR airfield, that means he has got a time zone only from sunrise to sunset because we cannot fly beyond sunset. So if he has to meet so many commitments, everyone is hard pressed for time. So that could be another factor. But there are regulations separately laid out for election flying. But election flying is something totally different from your normal scheduled flying or your normal non-scheduled operations. This flying takes place at short notice at different places, and the aircraft is chartered from a different station. The aircraft may originate from Delhi or it may come from Hyderabad, Chennai or Bangalore. In addition to the normal regulations that we have for flying, there are separate regulations which are issued by Ministry of Home Affairs and the Ministry of Civil Aviation under the heading of election flying. So it is not that we do not have regulations.
Captain, would you be able to let us know whether or not this aircraft was the older version, the Learjet 45, or whether it was the upgraded version, which is the XR?
This was the upgraded version, Victor Tango Sierra Sierra Kilo, registered with DGCA in 2010. This is a Learjet 45 XR. However, the manufacturing of this aircraft was stopped by Bombardier in roughly about end 2012, early 2013.
How do election regulations differ when it comes to flying?
Election regulations very clearly specify as to what sort of aircraft it should be, what are the inspections that need to be carried out, how is the crew to be selected, what is the classification required, what is the rest period required. So all that is laid down very meticulously, including what are the aids that an aircraft must have on board. So which in a normal non-scheduled operations, it is not so stringent, but election flying, it is stringent. The reason they also know that it is quite possible that on a particular airfield, there could be 6 aircraft landing with 6 different political parties. On a helipad, there could be 7, 8 helicopters landing. So they are instructions laid down to ensure that everyone is safe.
All right. Beyond this, I believe you have had some interaction with Ajit Pawar. Would you be able to tell us about those memories?
Yes. When I was with the government of Maharashtra as the chief pilot and as the director of civil aviation, I have interacted with him. Both when he was a passenger and I was flying the aircraft, and when for administrative duties with him. What I realized was he appeared to be very blunt and straight talking gentleman. But the biggest advantage of him as a politician or as a layman or as a common man, which I thought was, there was no beating around the bush. It was either yes or it was no. In my interaction of about a decade with him, I never heard him telling me, I will see, let me go through it. Why don't you put up another proposal? It is interesting. Let us have a look at it. It was either very straightforward, no, this is not practical, I am not going to approve it. Or he would say, yes, this makes sense. Please amplify and come back to me. And another quality of his, which not only the politicians, I would like to imbibe, and I expect everyone else to imbibe, is his management of time. He knew that time was important. If he gave you an appointment at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he himself would be there at 2:55. If he tells you that come to my office at 6 and I will meet you, I am talking of 6 in the morning, I will meet you, he would be there at 5:55 in the morning. I have never observed him being late to the time that he has given you. He is always stuck to his time, which I think is an excellent quality in all of us to have. Politicians, yes. And once I had asked him, sir, why are you so touchy about your timings for the meeting? So he gave me a very straightforward answer. He said, if I extend your meeting by 5 minutes, imagine what happens to the last guy in the queue, whom I have given a schedule at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. He said, I would meet him only at 11 o'clock, 11:30. I am not only wasting my time, I am also wasting his time, which is unfair. So if I have given you a slot for half an hour, I expect you to finish your work in that half an hour. If you can't finish, come and meet me again. Let us not waste each other's time, which is something I think a really commendable trait and which all of us need to imbibe, management of time.
All right, Captain, thank you so much for joining us and bringing us more insight into this tragedy that's taken place. The investigation will continue.
Thank you very much.